It's Bishop Brenda. Have you seen those memes about what other people think I do for a living? And it's one picture, and then there's another picture of what I think I do for a living, and then there's a third picture that says what I really do for a living. I think in the case of being a bishop, what other people think I do for a living is something like running from a burning building. And what I think I do for a living is something like battling fiery dragons. And what I really do for a living is spend a lot of time on the phone and emailing. And some days it feels like running through a field of flowers, and other days it feels like pushing rocks uphill. Yeah, I think that's accurate. I thought the same thing about the Conference of Bishops. I really was afraid to go. I got to be honest. It's a biannual event of the 65 bishops of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Now, we did it on Zoom this last week, and I was a little intimidated. I was afraid that the Conference of Bishops sits around and listens to really boring reports and then makes judgments on people and policies, and that I would leave feeling kind of icky. I mean, that's not cool, but that's what I was afraid of. Other bishops had said to me, no, it's not that bad. But I thought, I don't know. And then this is what happened. It ended up being this really wonderful meeting of people who are facing the kind of things I'm facing, with more experience, with more compassion, with more hope, with more wisdom. I felt wonderfully supported, but I also felt understood. To be honest, in some ways, I felt better about where our synod is and the hope we have and the abilities we have than some of the other stories. But what was really remarkable is we ended up having theological conversations that I didn't expect. In fact, one of the big challenges that came from Bishop Leila Ortiz at the Metro DC Synod was that we need to boil back down to what really matters, that we have the gospel. God loved us so much that God sent Jesus, and Jesus loved us so much that Jesus lived and died and rose again among us. And we maybe as a church have backed away from that. We have overwhelmed ourselves with discussions about how do we get things done? How do we raise enough money? How do we bring in young people? Instead of laying into the arms of Jesus, of celebrating who Jesus is and expecting our lives to be changed by him. One of the most remarkable things we talked about actually was Holy Communion. You wouldn't believe that, but we had this unbelievably gorgeous conversation about what Jesus promised us at the table and what we still experience today. Reverend Carmelo Santos, who is an employee of the ELCA and also working in theological reflection, shared with us an absolutely gorgeous paper about what happens in Holy Communion, that it's a means of grace, it's a delivery system of God to us, that God understood that just talking about who God was going to maybe help our brains, but wouldn't do enough for our bodies. That God knew we needed sacraments. We needed water poured all over us to remind us of God's grace. We needed to regularly receive the bread and the wine that have had the proclamations of God's promises said over them. And in that moment, our faith clings to those sacraments so that our body can consume them. We were having the conversation because we're still trying to figure out what's okay about communion. What is safe during the pandemic? What should we be doing digitally? And a lot of us said, look, that ship has sailed. We're all doing what we're doing. But I realized it's very important to really understand who we are worshiping, who we are following, and why we do what we're doing. I really want to invite you in your own congregations, if you're a pastor or if you're a parishioner, to really ask yourself, what do we think is happening during Holy Communion and baptism? In fact, I'm going to invite you to 2 havens that I'm having on November 4 to talk about just that. I expect it to be very exciting and very comforting as we talk about the Lutheran understanding of the sacraments. What is God doing when God embodies, when God comes into us through water and wine and bread? You do not need to be an expert. You just need to be somebody who's curious, who knows that God is present and wants to talk about it together. In the meantime, I pray that you're encouraged by the Holy Communion, no matter how you're taking it these days, in the tiny little cups, in just the bread, with a mask, online. I believe that God is doing miracles in this time and showing us that God is capable in ways we never understood. May you be encouraged this week. Amen.